My name is Evelyn Hart, I'm 74 years old, a retired school librarian with a good spine, a careful tongue, and a habit of noticing what people think I don't see. I raised one son on a widow's pension, kept a tidy little white house with blue shutters, and planted marigolds every summer because they bite mosquitoes and remind me there's still color after grief. Remember that when you judge me, dear viewer, because I'm about to tell you how I counted down while my own family stood trembling on the curb, and why I didn't blink when the locksmith turned the key. Why would a grandmother do such a thing, unless the truth leaves her no other way? The morning it happened, a flatbed truck idled at the curb, diesel breath fogging up the cool air as two movers in gray shirts lifted my son's leather sectional like it was nothing. Daniel kept saying, "Mom, you can't be serious," while his wife, Melissa, tried to look brave behind big sunglasses that couldn't hide her blotchy tears. My grandchildren, Chloe with her glittery backpack, Liam with his hair in his eyes, huddled by the mailbox, whispering like a storm was crawling across the street. My hand didn't even shake as I read the papers out loud. Notice of trespass lifted, emergency injunction dissolved, deed confirmed to the owner of record, me. But how did that deed land in my pocket at just the right time? And what changed between last night's argument and this morning's truck? "Ma'am," the sheriff said, cap tipped low. "We'll proceed now." He looked at me the way men look at frail things they wish they could fix. "Unless you instruct otherwise." Daniel's mouth fell open, and part of me wanted to fill it with all the casseroles I've made for him across 39 years, but I kept still as a gatepost. By the walkway, the marigolds burned orange holes into the day. "Proceed," I said, and I heard the ghost of my own mother whisper, "Don't flinch, not now." What would make a woman smother mercy like a candle and let night come early on her family? If you were standing there, you might have said I was cruel. But if you had stood with me yesterday, just yesterday, when the intake nurse in a lavender scrub top clipped a plastic band around my wrist and said, "You'll love the activities calendar here," you would have noticed the way the word "here" turned my stomach to ice. Here, where the windows looked out at a parking lot, here, where Daniel pretended not to hear me say no, here, where Melissa kept smoothing a brochure about memory care, though my memory is sharp enough to slice an apple thin. Why did they bring me there without telling me the truth until the pen hovered above the signature line? I remember the glittering edge of the pen, a promotional pen with the name of the facility, Meadow Ridge, curlicued along the barrel like a smile that didn't touch the eyes. "It's just for a few weeks, Mom," Daniel said. "For your safety." I can still feel the ribbon of fury that unwound in my chest when he said safety as if I were a candle, and he a glass jar to keep me from flaring. I laid the pen down like I was tucking a sleeping snake back into its basket. "Daniel," I said, "I walked 6 blocks in a thunderstorm last spring to pick up Chloe from ballet when your truck wouldn't start. My safety is not in question. So why did the admissions director keep pushing the paperwork forward?" Her smile tightening like a bowstring. Melissa's voice was sugar on a chipped plate. "Evelyn, we're overwhelmed. The kids, the mortgage, Dan's ours. We just need help." I looked at my son, his jaw set, his eyes slid away, and realized help was the wrong word. They wanted control. My house had become the air they breathed and the ground under their sandals, and somehow I had become the squeak in the floor they could no longer stand. "We moved our things in," Daniel said, "because you said you were thinking about downsizing." I had said I was thinking, not that I was handing him the bones of my life like kindling. Who taught him to hear only the part of a sentence that served him? Now, viewer, I'll confess something that might sour in your mouth before it melts. I had been planning since April. Not out of spite, out of math. Out of the steady arithmetic of being a widow who spent a career cataloging what people return late and what they never return at all. I made an appointment with a young attorney whose tie was too tight, a Mr. Whitaker who blinked a lot but listened more. We formed a revocable living trust with an ugly name and beautiful clause. I placed the title to my house in its teeth. I drafted a lethal little letter that would release the tenant at will arrangement the second certain conditions were met: unauthorized transfer of mail to this address, change of primary residence filed by a non-owner, any attempt to institutionalize me without court order or independent medical evaluation. Why would I arm myself with papers instead of a scream? 'Cause I knew my son. Kind but not brave. Practical but not loyal. He is the sum of the shortcuts he's taken. And Melissa is the echo that taught him to believe the shortcut is the road. They moved in quietly. First a few boxes in the garage for storage, then a bed in the guest room while the painters finish, then a refrigerator stuffed with fancy yogurt and tiny jars of jam like jewelry. One afternoon, I caught Melissa changing the forwarding address for their bank statements, and when I spoke up, she laughed and said, "It's just easier. You know what else is easier? Turning a mother into a roommate. Isn't that a tender little murder, slow and polite?" At Meadow Ridge, I excused myself to the restroom. I did not need to go. I needed to call Mr. Whitaker and say the code phrase we'd agreed on. "The marigolds are in bloom." There was a pause, then paper rustling, then his voice settling into a lower register. "Do you want me to trigger?" he asked. Trigger. The letter to the sheriff, the notice to vacate, the motion to lift the trespass flag Daniel had pinned on my own doorknob after changing the lock, "for your safety." I looked in the mirror at my face, a map with old roads but no less true, and said, "Yes." Why did my voice sound like a match striking? When I returned, the admissions director had brought out a chocolate chip cookie on a napkin, the kind they give the guilty to sweeten their signatures. "We have movie nights," she chirped. "And bingo on Thursdays." I thought about the movies I've lived and the Thursdays I've earned and decided I would not let a calendar do my living for me. "I'm not staying," I said. Daniel said, "You don't have a choice." He said it softly like a lullaby, which made it worse. The nurse reached for my wristband, but my hand was steel. Behind us, the automatic doors hissed open and Mr. Whitaker swept in, cheeks flushed, a printout already in his hand. Why did Melissa's smile break then, like a window hit by a small, determined stone? We left Meadow Ridge with the sun glaring hard as judgment. That night, the trust fired its quiet guns. Notices delivered. Locks scheduled. Accounts frozen. Not theirs, never theirs, but the utilities I still paid. I slept in my room with the door pushed against a chair the way I did the day my husband died, and the world shifted out of its joints. I prayed not for mercy, but for courage to stand upright when morning broke. Is there anything lonelier than a prayer no one else would understand? And then morning came, the movers came, the sheriff came, and my family stood in the yard of the house they mistook for theirs. Daniel stepped forward with that calm smirk he wears when he thinks charm can repaint the truth. "Mom," he said, "let's be reasonable." I lifted my chin the way Mrs. Keating, my high school headmistress, taught me. A quarter inch makes all the difference between apology and authority. "I am reasonable," I said, and I began to count down, not to threaten, but to mark the end of something soft in me that had been dying for months. 3, 2. And as I drew breath for one, a black sedan swung around the corner and rolled to a stop at the curb. The rear door opened, a pair of polished shoes touched the pavement, and a man stepped out holding a slim leather folder with my late husband's name embossed in gold, something I had not seen in 20 years, while Melissa's face went paper white as if she recognized him first. The man who stepped out of the black sedan wore a gray suit sharp enough to cut silence. He wasn't tall, but he carried himself like a gavel already in motion. Each step was a verdict. Melissa gasped before anyone else, and the sound clawed my spine. Daniel frowned, confused, but his wife's trembling hand slipped into his like she was begging him not to ask who this stranger was. He opened the leather folder, and the glint of embossed gold letters, "Richard A. Hart," burned the daylight. My late husband's name. My Richard, gone nearly 20 years, yet here was some document he had left behind, waiting dormant like a time bomb ticking in ink. Why did Melissa know exactly what it was before even I did? "Mrs. Hart," the man said, voice calm, steady. "I am Edward Sloane, executor of your late husband's secondary estate file. I apologize for the delay in reaching you. Certain instructions were time-locked, only to be delivered upon specific triggers. One of those conditions was met yesterday evening." His words wrapped around me like cold wires. Secondary estate file. Triggered by what? Melissa's face was paper white now, her eyes darting as though she could erase his voice with a blink. And Daniel, poor Daniel, just stared, his mouth dry as dust. What had Richard left that even I hadn't known about? Mr. Sloane extended a thin envelope with my name typed neatly on it. My fingers shook as I slid it open, the paper whispering like an old friend finally daring to speak. The letter was short, direct, exactly how Richard spoke when he wanted no debate. "Evelyn," it began, "if you're reading this, then our son has forgotten the foundation we tried to build for him. Protect yourself. This house is yours alone, but the lake cabin, the one we never told him about, remains under your name in trust until now. Use it wisely or not at all, but never let anyone corner you." My throat tightened. Richard, even from the grave, had left me a weapon. Why now? Why had Melissa paled at the mention of the cabin before a single detail was shared? Daniel stammered. "What is this? Mom, you knew about this." I met his eyes. "No, Daniel. Your father and I kept it quiet. For a reason." My voice cracked on reason because the reason was standing in front of me. A son who saw his mother as an obstacle, a daughter-in-law whose ambition smelled like rot under perfume. Mr. Sloane cleared his throat. "Per the instructions, Mrs. Hart, the trust grants you full discretion. However, I must also inform you that another document names Melissa Carter, your daughter-in-law, as having attempted to access this property years ago, without authorization." His gaze landed on Melissa, and her shoulders curled inward as if bracing for a blow. How could she have known about the cabin long before me? Viewers, I ask you, how would you feel if the person you invited into your family like a daughter had already been plotting, quietly, to secure something that was never hers? Would you forgive her? Or would you finally see the betrayal standing naked in daylight? My knees wanted to give way, but anger kept them locked. Daniel tried to cover her silence with noise. Melissa didn't know. She couldn't have. But Melissa cut him off, her voice sharp, panicked. "I thought it was abandoned." I thought. Then she stopped too late. She had confessed what we hadn't accused. The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. The movers set the sectional down. And for a moment, time stopped between the marigolds and the sedan. I remembered the night years ago when Melissa had insisted she drive me home from church and had taken the long way past the lake roads, pretending she was lost. I thought it was nothing. A new bride learning the routes. But now I saw the truth. She had been circling, hunting. And Daniel, my boy, had been blind or had chosen blindness. Which is worse? I folded the letter and slipped it back into the envelope, pressing it flat against my palm like a secret I wasn't ready to spill. But Melissa's eyes burned holes through me, pleading and hateful at once. Mr. Sloane gave a small bow. "My duty is complete. The rest is in your hands, Mrs. Hart." He turned to leave, but I stopped him. "Wait. If the trust has been violated, if she attempted fraud, what happens?" He paused, adjusting his tie. "Then by the terms, any claimant loses all standing, and the trustee is empowered to eject violators from all properties linked to the estate." Gasps rose from the yard, neighbors peeking from across the street, my grandchildren wide-eyed. I realized the power in my hand was heavier than any set of house keys. But how far was I willing to go, when the faces staring at me weren't strangers but my blood, my family? Daniel stepped closer, his voice breaking. "Mom, please, we didn't mean." But I cut him off with a look that froze the rest of his sentence in his throat. I had a choice to make. The kind that could rewrite our family forever. And as I opened my mouth to speak, Melissa suddenly dropped to her knees right there on the grass, clutching my hand with shaking fingers. "Evelyn," she whispered, desperate and raw, "if you send us away, you don't know what else will come out. Please, don't open that door." "What else?" "What door?" And why did her words make the marigolds seem to shiver in the breeze like they knew a secret I didn't? Melissa's grip on my hand was clammy, her nails digging into my skin as if she thought pain could buy forgiveness. Her words, "Don't open that door," echoed in my head, louder than the sheriff's boots crunching the gravel or the movers shifting their weight in awkward silence. I stared at her, this woman I'd once thought would be the balm to Daniel's restless spirit, and realized she wasn't begging for mercy. She was bargaining for secrets. Secrets she'd rather die with than see spilled in daylight. "Stand up, Melissa," I said coldly. My voice didn't tremble, though my heart was galloping like a horse spooked by thunder. She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks, but not from sorrow. I'd seen crocodile tears before. No, this was fear. Real gut-deep fear. And that terrified me more than her words. What had my late husband hidden? What had Melissa tried to uncover? And why was Daniel still frozen like a man who'd walked into the wrong house and didn't know whether to stay or run? The sheriff cleared his throat. "Mrs. Hart, do you want to continue the eviction?" His tone was steady, but his eyes darted between us, sensing the storm building in the still air. The movers looked relieved to have something to do, ready to haul furniture whether it was into the truck or back into my house. And me. I was standing at the crossroads of fury and grief, torn between protecting myself and protecting the pieces of family I still loved, no matter how badly they'd cut me. "Proceed," I whispered, though part of me wanted to scream the opposite. Daniel's face twisted in shock. "Mom, you can't. Don't you dare tell me what I can or cannot do, Daniel," I snapped, sharper than I'd ever spoken to him, even as a child. "You dragged me to that nursing home against my will. You let them try to clip a wristband on me like I was some broken doll. You changed the locks on my house, signed your name on papers you didn't even read. And now you want to stand here and call me unreasonable." The words scorched the air between us. His shoulders slumped, and for the first time in his life, Daniel looked small. But before he could answer, Melissa rose to her feet, her mascara streaked, her voice low but steady. "Evelyn, if you put us out, if you drag this through the courts, everyone will know. About the cabin. About Richard. About you." Her words struck like a hammer. "About you." What did she mean? My breath caught, the world narrowing to her smirk, her challenge. The neighbors leaning out from their porches, the movers pretending not to listen, even the sheriff waiting, it all blurred. "What about me, Melissa?" I asked, my voice trembling now, not with fear but with the unbearable weight of suspicion. Melissa crossed her arms, suddenly bold, as though she had waited years for this moment. "Ask yourself why Richard hid that cabin. Ask yourself why he left you that letter, but not all the truth. You think you've been betrayed, Evelyn. You have no idea." Daniel turned to her in shock. "Melissa, what are you talking about?" His voice cracked, caught between husband and son, torn by loyalties he didn't know how to carry. She only shook her head, lips pressed tight, like she was daring me to force the truth out of her. The sheriff's hand rested lightly on his belt, his eyes watchful. "Mrs. Hart," he said, "if there's more to this, you might want to settle it before I act on the papers." His words were gentle, but the meaning was sharp. Once the truck left, there was no undoing it. And for the first time since Richard's death, I felt the ground tilt beneath me. Had my husband left me love or lies? Had Melissa stumbled on something I had ignored for decades? Too loyal, too trusting, too blind? I tightened my grip on the envelope with Richard's letter, the paper crinkling in my fist, as I met Melissa's defiant gaze. "Then tell me," I demanded. "Tell me what I don't know." She smiled through her tears, a broken, bitter smile. "Are you sure you want your grandchildren to hear it, Evelyn? Because once it's said, you can't put it back in the box." The air went heavy. My marigolds no longer looked like flowers but like tiny fires warning me of a blaze to come. My chest ached as Chloe tugged on Liam's arm, whispering, "What's happening, Liam?" But even children could sense it. Our family was dangling at the edge of a cliff, one push away from shattering completely. And just as Melissa opened her mouth, about to spill the secret she'd been holding like a dagger, a voice cut through the yard. Steady, unfamiliar, commanding. "That's enough." We all turned. Standing at the edge of the driveway was another figure I hadn't seen in years. A woman in a navy trench coat, gray hair pinned tight, eyes sharp as a hawk's. In her hand, she held a manila folder identical to Sloane's, except hers bore not Richard's name but mine. "Evelyn Hart," she said. "It's time you faced what was left behind." And my heart stopped cold. Who was she? And why did my name gleam on that folder like a mirror I wasn't ready to look into? For a moment, silence swallowed the yard. Even the diesel hum of the moving truck seemed to fade under the weight of that woman's words. Her heels clicked against the pavement as she walked closer, each step deliberate, like a judge approaching the bench. The folder in her hand bore my name in bold black type, and something inside me shrank, as if all the courage I had gathered to stand against Daniel and Melissa had suddenly been snatched away. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice thinner than I wanted it to be. My fingers clutched Richard's envelope tighter, the paper crumpling under the strain. The woman stopped a few feet from me, her gaze unwavering. "My name is Margaret Wells. I was your husband's attorney before he passed. More importantly, I am the custodian of the files he left behind. Files that were never meant for anyone's eyes until the right moment." She held the folder up slightly. "This is yours, Evelyn. And whether you like it or not, the time has come." Melissa let out a bitter laugh, her voice cracking. "See. Told you. It was never just about us moving in, Evelyn. Richard didn't trust you either. Why else would he keep things hidden?" Her words sliced at me, but I refused to flinch. "He trusted me more than he ever trusted you," I snapped back, though inside doubt prickled sharp. Why hadn't Richard told me about Margaret? Why was there another folder with my name, sitting in the shadows all these years? Daniel stepped forward, his hands shaking. "Look, this is insane. Some cabin, some secret files, it doesn't matter. Mom, you're overreacting. We just wanted. Cut him off. You wanted my house. You wanted me tucked away in a home where you wouldn't have to answer to me. Don't you dare water this down, Daniel." Margaret's eyes flicked to him briefly, then back to me. "He's not wrong, Evelyn. The cabin, the trust, the hidden file, it all ties together. Richard anticipated this day. He knew control and greed would circle you, from family or outsiders. He left safeguards. But he also left truths you may find hard to swallow." She extended the folder toward me. My hand trembled as I reached out. Melissa's eyes gleamed with something darker than curiosity. It was satisfaction, like she had been waiting for me to feel the same sting she felt. Daniel looked between us all, confusion and frustration pulling his features tight. My grandchildren clung to each other near the porch, their innocent faces absorbing a storm they shouldn't have had to witness. When my fingers finally touched the folder, it was heavier than I expected, thick with documents that whispered of years I thought I understood. I pulled it open, the papers rustling like restless ghosts. The first page stopped me cold. A property deed, not for the house or the cabin, but for a business, Hart and Company. Publishing, dated nearly 35 years back. Richard's name was there, bold and firm, but next to it was another signature. I staggered back. What is this? I never signed this." Margaret's voice softened, but her words hit like stones. "You did, Evelyn. During your early years of marriage, Richard asked you to sign papers you didn't read closely. He filed this under joint ownership. But later, much later, he restructured. Without telling you. That business became the foundation for investments that built this house, the cabin, everything. And Melissa," she paused, her gaze flicking to my daughter-in-law, "tried to access those files years ago. She found traces. She thought she could use them." Melissa's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't deny it. I felt my knees weaken, the marigolds blurring in my vision. Memories came flooding back. Afternoons when Richard would slide papers across the table saying, "Just sign, Eve, it's nothing important." My trust in him had been automatic, blind. Was I complicit in my own deception all along? Daniel's voice cracked the silence. "So what does this mean? That Dad built all this and left Mom in the dark? That's ridiculous. Mom, tell her she's lying." But I couldn't. My tongue was heavy, my chest hollow. Because deep down, a small voice whispered the truth. Richard had loved me, yes, but Richard had also been a man who thrived on control, on secrets folded neatly into drawers I was never allowed to open. Margaret stepped closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "There's more, Evelyn. He didn't just hide financial dealings. There's something about the cabin, something Melissa may already know. If you want to see it, you'll have to open the sealed envelope inside. I looked down. Nestled among the documents was a smaller, sealed envelope marked in Richard's handwriting. For Evelyn, only if the house is threatened. My heart hammered. My house had been threatened. My very life had been shoved toward a nursing home bed. Did I dare open it here, in front of everyone? I held the envelope like it was burning through my skin. Daniel watched me with pleading eyes. Melissa with hunger. Margaret with grim duty. My grandchildren with confusion. The choice loomed over me. To tear it open and spill whatever truths Richard had buried, or to hold it close and keep the balance of power in my hands a little longer. My fingers found the flap, my breath catching. But before I could rip it open, Melissa lunged forward, her hand snatching at the envelope with desperate speed. And just like that, the secret nearly slipped from my grasp. The envelope nearly tore as Melissa's fingers closed around it. For a split second we both held it, her grip frantic, mine iron strong, neither of us willing to let go. The thin paper strained between us, a fragile wall between past and present, truth and denial. "Give it to me," Melissa hissed, her eyes wild. Her face stripped of the polite mask she usually wore at church dinners and family gatherings. Her voice was guttural, desperate. "You don't know what's inside, Evelyn. You can't handle it." My heart pounded like a drum. I leaned forward, my voice low, deadly steady. "If you're this desperate to stop me, Melissa, then I have to open it." The sheriff moved instinctively, stepping between us, his hand resting on the butt of his holstered weapon. Not to draw, but as a warning. "Ladies," he said firmly, "this isn't the place." The movers froze mid-step, watching with the wide-eyed unease of men who'd stumbled into a play they didn't understand. Daniel rushed forward, prying Melissa's hand off mine. "Melissa, stop it." But her eyes never left the envelope. She was trembling now, tears streaking her cheeks, though I knew. Oh, I knew. Those tears weren't for me or even for Daniel. They were for the secrets threatening to choke her in broad daylight. I pulled the envelope tight to my chest. My fingers shook, but my resolve didn't. I turned to Margaret. "You said this was left for me if the house was threatened." My son tried to put me away. My daughter-in-law tried to take what wasn't hers. My home was invaded. "I think that qualifies, don't you?" Margaret nodded once, solemn. "It does." Daniel threw up his hands. "Mom, please listen to me. Don't open it here. Not in front of the kids. If Dad left something, if he kept something from us, what good will it do to drag it into the open now?" "Because secrets," I said, staring straight at him, "are the rot that weakens foundations. They look solid until the day the whole house collapses." With that, I slid my thumb under the flap. The paper tore slowly, agonizingly, as if the envelope itself resisted. I unfolded the single sheet inside and felt the air around me thicken. It wasn't long. Just a handwritten note, in Richard's sharp, deliberate script. "Evelyn, if you are reading this, it means trust has been broken in the family. You must know the truth. The cabin is not just a retreat. Beneath it lies the second ledger. The money from Hart and Company was not all accounted for in our public records. I kept investments there, investments under names that could never be traced. If Daniel or Melissa found out, they would use it to take control. Protect it. Protect yourself. If necessary, expose the ledger. It will end them." Froze. My breath caught like a fish snagged on a hook. The ground beneath my feet felt unsteady. Second ledger. Hidden money. Richard had not only hidden properties. He had hidden entire lives of wealth, lives I never knew existed. Melissa's gasp sliced through the silence. "So it's true," she whispered, her voice trembling between awe and rage. "The ledger exists. That's why you kept us out, Evelyn. That's why you tried to push me away from the cabin." I looked up sharply. "How long have you known?" Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "Long enough. I found hints years ago, when I went through some of Richard's old files in the attic. I thought it was nothing until Sloane mentioned the cabin. Then I knew. I knew what he was hiding, and I knew if I could find it, Daniel and I would never have to struggle again. Daniel's face was ashen, his eyes wide as he turned on her. Melissa, you went through my father's files. Without telling me. She laughed, broken and harsh. Don't act shocked, Daniel. You never cared about the details. You only wanted the comfort. I was the one who saw what was possible. You think your mother's being cruel. She's protecting herself, not you. Don't you see? She'll die with it before she ever lets us have it. Her words rang in my ears like accusations I didn't deserve, yet couldn't deny. She was right about one thing. I would protect Richard's secrets before I handed them to her greedy hands. But the revelation twisted something deep in me, because for the first time, I questioned whether I even wanted Richard's secrets. The sheriff's voice cut in, cautious but firm. Mrs. Hart, this sounds bigger than an eviction. If there are financial irregularities, hidden assets, you may want to contact the courts before moving further. But before I could respond, Chloe's small voice rang out from the porch, trembling and sharp with a child's brutal honesty. Grandma, why are you fighting with Daddy and Mommy? Why does everyone keep talking about secrets? The yard went still. Chloe's question sliced through all the adult noise and landed square in my chest. Tears pricked my eyes. I wanted to scoop her into my arms and shield her from all of it, but how could I, when I was standing in the center of a battlefield that was tearing her family apart? Melissa turned toward her daughter, her face softening, her voice syrup-sweet. Sweetheart, it's just grown-up business. But Chloe shook her head, her little brow furrowed. No, grown-ups are supposed to keep us safe. Not fight like this. Her words were a knife I hadn't expected. My chest burned. For a moment the envelope, the ledger, the secrets, none of it mattered. What mattered was the look on my granddaughter's face. Confusion, fear, and disappointment. And yet, I knew Melissa wasn't done. I could see it in her eyes. The determination, the hunger. She would not rest until she had that ledger. And if she ever got her hands on it, she would destroy everything left of Richard's legacy. I folded the letter and slipped it back into the envelope. This isn't over, I said, my voice trembling with both fury and sorrow. But it won't be settled here. Melissa's eyes narrowed. Then it will be settled at the cabin. The words hung in the air like a gunshot. Daniel turned to her, horrified. Margaret stiffened, her jaw tightening. And me. My blood ran cold. Because the cabin wasn't just a retreat anymore. It was the key. The battlefield. The place where the truth would finally come out. And deep down I knew, we were all going to end up there whether we wanted to or not. The word cabin landed like a stone dropped in still water, sending ripples through everyone's face. Even the sheriff stiffened, sensing the shift in the air. Melissa's challenge wasn't just defiance. It was a declaration of war. My knuckles tightened around the envelope until it nearly crumpled. I could feel my late husband's presence in every beat of my heart, urging me to stand tall, to guard what he'd left, but also reminding me of the betrayal wrapped in those very secrets. Daniel broke the silence first, his voice rough and trembling. Melissa, stop. Please. This has gone too far. My father's gone, Mom's alive, and we're tearing each other apart over something that may not even matter anymore. His words cracked, carrying the hollow ring of a man begging for peace while drowning in chaos. Melissa turned on him, her eyes blazing. Doesn't matter. Daniel, open your eyes. Your father hid millions, maybe billions, in that ledger. Do you think he meant for your mother to sit on it until she dies? No, he built it for his bloodline. For Chloe and Liam. And she's too stubborn, too selfish to see it. Her voice shook with anger, but there was desperation too, the kind that curdles into madness if left unchecked. She looked at me then, her face twisted. You'll take it to your grave out of pride. And what happens to your grandchildren then? Struggling while you guard dusty secrets. Her words stung because they hid a truth I hadn't wanted to face. Was I protecting my legacy? Or chaining it down in fear of betrayal? The marigolds by the walkway blurred in my vision as my chest ached with the weight of choice. Margaret stepped forward, her eyes locked on Melissa. That ledger isn't an inheritance, Mrs. Carter. It's contraband. Off-record accounts, shell corporations, offshore investments. If you use it, you risk everything. Tax fraud, investigations, criminal charges. She paused, her voice low and sharp. Richard didn't leave it for you. He left it as leverage for Evelyn. Melissa sneered, her composure cracking. Leverage? Against me. I married into this family. I bore its children. I kept Daniel afloat when he failed his bar exam twice, when he— Enough! Daniel's roar silenced her. His face was red, his hands shaking. You've said enough, Melissa. His eyes darted to me, heavy with shame. Mom, I didn't know any of this. I swear I didn't. If I had. His words trailed, but the silence finished them. If he had, maybe he would have chosen differently. I looked at my son, my only son, and felt the years of love, sacrifice, and disappointment crash together like waves in a storm. He was broken, but was he mine to fix anymore? The sheriff, still keeping his steady stance, spoke carefully. Mrs. Hart, if this cabin holds what you claim, it's no longer just family business. Could be federal. I'd advise caution. But Melissa's eyes gleamed with a feverish light. Caution won't feed Chloe and Liam. Caution won't pay the mortgage. That cabin is the answer, and we all know it. Chloe, hearing her name, stepped forward from the porch. Mommy, what's at the cabin? Her small voice cut like glass, innocent yet piercing. Liam clung to her hand, his face pale. Melissa's lips parted, but no sound came out. For once, her mask faltered completely. I crouched, my knees aching, and held Chloe's gaze. Sweetheart, the cabin is just a place your grandpa loved. But right now, the grown-ups are fighting over it, and that's not your burden. My voice wavered, but I forced a smile. She frowned, not satisfied, but Liam tugged her back. Margaret placed a hand on my shoulder, grounding me. Evelyn, this decision is yours. You can burn that letter right now and end the fight. Or you can go to the cabin and face whatever truth Richard left waiting. But be warned, the moment you step foot there, nothing will be the same. The evening air grew heavy, the sky bruising with the colors of dusk. Melissa's breathing was ragged, Daniel's shoulders sagged under invisible weight, the sheriff's patience thinned, and my grandchildren's wide eyes clung to me like lifelines. I straightened slowly, clutching the envelope to my chest. My voice carried across the yard, firm and final. If answers are at the cabin, then that's where this ends. Tomorrow morning, we'll settle it there. Gasps broke from neighbors watching behind curtains. Daniel's head dropped into his hands. Melissa smiled, sharp and triumphant, like she had been waiting for me to say those words. And Margaret only sighed, as though she'd expected this all along. But as I turned toward the house, ready to retreat for the night, a flicker in Melissa's eyes chilled me. Anticipation, hunger, and something darker. She wasn't just waiting for tomorrow. She was planning for it. And in that moment I realized, the fight at the cabin might not just be about the ledger. It might be about survival. Would I make it back with my family intact? Or would the truth buried beneath that cabin destroy us all? The night before the cabin trip, sleep would not come. I lay in my bed with the letter on the nightstand, the house too quiet for comfort. The marigolds glowed faintly in the moonlight outside my window, their orange petals like tiny lanterns warning me not to close my eyes. Every creak in the floorboards sounded like Richard's ghost pacing, whispering reminders of the secrets he left behind. At midnight, I heard hushed voices in the hallway. Daniel and Melissa. I pressed my ear against the door, my pulse hammering. We can't let her control this, Melissa hissed. Tomorrow we get that ledger. Once we do, we'll be set. No more debts, no more begging. Daniel's voice was lower, hesitant. Melissa, what if Mom's right? What if it's illegal? We could lose everything. Her response was sharp as broken glass. We've already lost everything. She's kicking us out, Daniel. Or did you forget? You want to raise our kids in a motel. You want to explain to Chloe why her grandma chose marigolds over family. Wake up. This is our only chance. Silence. And then Daniel's weary sigh. Fine. Tomorrow then. I backed away from the door, my legs trembling. They weren't just after the truth. They were ready to take it by force. And if they did, what would stop them from silencing me forever? Morning arrived gray and heavy, as if the sky itself dreaded what was coming. The sheriff insisted on accompanying us for order's sake, though I suspected curiosity tugged at him too. Margaret came, her folder clutched to her chest. My grandchildren sat quietly in the back seat of Daniel's SUV, their faces pale, sensing this was no ordinary trip. The drive to the cabin twisted through back roads lined with pines, the world narrowing into shadows. The air grew colder the closer we got, though perhaps that was only in my chest. Memories stirred. Summer afternoons when Richard and I picnicked by the lake, laughter echoing off the water. Those memories soured now, tainted by the thought of hidden ledgers and lies tucked beneath the floorboards. When the cabin came into view, Melissa leaned forward in her seat like a predator sighting prey. The structure stood weathered but sturdy, logs dark with age, the lake behind it silver under the weak sun. The place looked ordinary, but my stomach knotted as though we were approaching a crypt. Inside, dust coated the furniture, and the air smelled of pine and damp earth. The sheriff stayed near the door, watchful. Margaret directed us to the stone fireplace. Richard's instructions were clear. If the ledger exists, it's hidden beneath. Melissa rushed forward, her hands trembling as she tugged at the hearthstones. Daniel tried to stop her, but she pushed him aside, desperation making her strong. "Help me," she snapped, and though he hesitated, he obeyed. I stood frozen, watching my son and his wife claw at Richard's secrets like animals at a buried bone. Each stone scraped loose with a groan, each movement pulling us closer to revelation. My hands shook, but I couldn't bring myself to stop them, not yet. Finally, with a grunt, Daniel lifted the last heavy slab. Beneath it lay a metal lockbox, rusted but intact. Melissa let out a triumphant cry, her eyes wild. "There it is. I knew it." Margaret stepped forward sharply. "Careful. If Richard locked it, there's a reason." But Melissa ignored her. She snatched at the box, her fingers fumbling with the latch. When it wouldn't budge, she cursed under her breath and turned to Daniel. "Break it." "Melissa." He began, but she cut him off. "Break it, Daniel. Do you want to stay on the streets?" The sheriff stepped forward, hand raised. "Ma'am, I can't allow tampering until we know what's inside." Melissa rounded on him, her eyes blazing. "Stay out of this. This is family." "Family." I finally spoke, my voice trembling but loud. "You don't tear apart hearthstones for family. You don't shove an old woman into a nursing home for family. You don't steal what was never yours for family." Melissa froze, her chest heaving, the box clutched to her stomach like a stolen child. For the first time, her bravado cracked into raw, unmasked fear. "You don't understand, Evelyn," she whispered, her voice trembling. "If you knew what I knew, you'd open this box yourself." My blood ran cold. Her words carried weight, not just greed. There was something in that box she was terrified of, but also desperate to use. And then, with one violent motion, she slammed the lockbox onto the stone hearth. The rusty latch snapped open, the lid flying back with a screech. Inside lay stacks of yellowed papers, bound with brittle twine, and atop them, a slim black leather ledger, edges worn smooth by Richard's hands. Melissa's fingers darted toward it. "Stop!" I shouted, my voice shaking the rafters. But it was too late. She lifted the ledger high, her eyes wide with victory. And then her face went pale as death. She gasped, stumbling back, the ledger clutched to her chest as though it had burned her. Because on the first page, written in Richard's unmistakable hand, were not just numbers. There were names. Names I recognized. Names that should never have been there. Names that, if exposed, could destroy more than just my family. The names glared up at me from across the room like ghosts dragged into daylight. Familiar names. Men who still sat on city councils. A banker who smiled at me every Sunday in church. Even the mayor's late brother, whose funeral I had attended with a casserole dish in hand. My knees buckled, and for a moment I gripped the mantel just to stay upright. Melissa's lips trembled as she read, her voice breaking. He kept records of them. Their money. Their meetings. My God, Evelyn. This isn't just about family money. This is. She snapped the ledger shut, clutching it tight, her chest rising and falling in panicked gasps. Margaret's face drained of color. Those are off-the-books dealings. Payoffs. Laundered donations. If these names see daylight, entire institutions will collapse. She turned to me, her voice urgent. Evelyn, this ledger could make you the most powerful, or the most hunted woman in this town. The sheriff's jaw tightened. He shifted uneasily, torn between duty and fear. If what you're saying is true, this goes way beyond me. Federal agents, investigations. Evelyn, this could ruin lives. Melissa clutched the book like it was her salvation. Or save ours. Don't you see? With this, we'd have leverage. We'd never struggle again. These people would pay anything to keep their secrets safe. Her eyes were fever-bright, almost unhinged. We could own them. I stepped forward slowly, my breath sharp in my chest. You mean blackmail? You'd use my husband's sins to build your throne on other people's ruins. Melissa's gaze snapped to me, desperate and raw. Better ruins than rags, Evelyn. Better power than poverty. Daniel snatched the ledger from her hands. His face twisted in disgust. Melissa, listen to yourself. This is poison. Dad was into things none of us should touch. He didn't tell Mom because he knew it would destroy her. His voice cracked. And now you want to make it our future. Her face flushed, her fists trembling. Don't act righteous, Daniel. You'd rather starve than seize a chance to give your kids security. Chloe's shoes have holes. Liam barely has school supplies. And your mother? She jabbed a finger at me. She'd rather die alone in that house than share a single drop of it. I felt something inside me snap. I raised Daniel with nothing but bookshelves and grit. I fed him on soup and second jobs. Don't you dare call me selfish because I won't let you poison my grandchildren with stolen wealth. My voice broke into a roar that silenced even the sheriff. Melissa's tears spilled freely now, her body shaking. You don't understand, Evelyn. If you don't use it, they'll come for you. The people in this ledger, they don't forgive. They don't forget. If they find out you opened it, you'll be the one on the street. Or worse. The cabin air thickened, heavy with dread. For the first time, fear seeped into my bones. Not of Melissa, not of Daniel's weakness, but of the shadows Richard had consorted with. Men with power, money, reach. If his ledger ever left this room, would I even live to see justice, or would I vanish like a stain scrubbed from history? Margaret spoke, her voice low and steady. Evelyn, you must choose. Burn it here now, and the secret dies with Richard. Or keep it, and you'll hold a weapon that can change everything, but at the cost of your peace, your safety, perhaps your family. The fire crackled in the hearth, hungry and waiting, as if daring me to toss the ledger into its flames. Melissa lunged toward me, her hands outstretched. Don't you dare burn it. This is our future, Evelyn. Daniel shoved her back. His face twisted in fury. Our future is not built on blackmail and blood money. He turned to me, his eyes pleading, childlike again. Mom, please. Decide. I looked at the book in his trembling hands. The marigolds flashed in my mind, bright and stubborn, growing even in poor soil. I thought of Chloe's small voice asking why grown-ups fought instead of keeping her safe. I thought of Richard's secretive smile whenever he locked his briefcase at night. The ledger sat between us like a coiled snake, waiting for someone to strike. My breath shook as I reached out, fingers brushing the cover. The whole room held its breath. Would I cast it into the fire and let the past die? Or would I open it wider and unleash the storm Richard left behind? And just as my fingers closed around it, the front door of the cabin slammed open with a bang. 3 men in dark suits stood in the doorway, their faces hard, their eyes like ice. And one of them said, "Mrs. Hart, we'll be taking that ledger now." The room froze. Even the fire seemed to hesitate, its crackle dying into a low hiss. The men stepped inside with the calm assurance of wolves entering a pen of sheep. Their suits were crisp, their shoes polished, but it was the bulge at one man's hip and the cold certainty in their eyes that silenced every protest before it could form. Melissa gasped and clutched Daniel's arm. "Who are they?" The man in front, tall with a scar running from his temple to his jawline, smiled without warmth. "We're friends of Richard Hart. He did good business with us. We're here to collect what belongs to us." His eyes landed on the ledger in Daniel's trembling hands. "That. Hand it over." The sheriff straightened, hand near his holster. "You can't just barge in here." The scarred man's smile widened. "Sheriff, if you want to keep that badge, you'll stay quiet. You've already been paid once to look the other way. Don't make me collect twice." The color drained from the sheriff's face. He didn't move. My stomach lurched. Paid once. Richard's ledger hadn't just recorded corrupt politicians. It had hooks in law enforcement too. Margaret stepped forward, her chin lifted. "By what right are you here? This property belongs to Mrs. Hart. That ledger is private family property." The man chuckled, the sound dry as dead leaves. "Lady, that book has ruined men braver than you. Do you think a widow and a squabbling family can protect it?" He glanced at me, his eyes narrowing. "Give it to us, Evelyn, and we walk out. Nobody gets hurt." Melissa pushed forward, her voice frantic. "Wait. If we give it to you, what do we get? Richard owed you, didn't he? Maybe there's a deal." "Melissa!" Daniel hissed, horrified, but it was too late. The scarred man's smile vanished. "You've said too much already." His hand twitched toward his coat pocket, and fear rippled through the room like an electric current. I forced myself to stand tall, though my knees screamed with terror. "That ledger was left to me. My husband may have done business with you, but he left me the choice. And I'll be damned if I hand over my life's last shred of truth to the same men who dragged him into the mud." My voice wavered but didn't break. The scarred man's gaze hardened. He took one slow step forward. "Then you've chosen wrong." For a heartbeat, no one moved. The cabin walls seemed to close in, heavy with dread. Melissa whimpered. Daniel clutched the ledger tighter. Margaret shifted closer to me as if ready to shield me. My grandchildren huddled in the corner, their eyes wide with terror, and my heart cracked at the sight. Then suddenly Chloe's small voice rang out, shrill and trembling. "Leave my grandma alone." Her cry shattered the standstill. The scarred man's eyes darted to her, and in that split second Daniel acted. He hurled the ledger into the fire. The flames roared, hungrily devouring paper and ink, pages curling into black ash. "No!" Melissa screamed, lunging toward the hearth. The scarred man swore violently, rushing forward, but it was too late. The ledger was burning, Richard's secrets vanishing in smoke. Chaos erupted. Melissa clawed at the fireplace, trying to rescue the pages, shrieking like a madwoman. Daniel pulled her back, his face twisted with anguish. The sheriff finally drew his weapon, shouting, "Everyone stand back!" Margaret grabbed my arm, yanking me toward the children. The scarred man advanced, fury blazing in his eyes. "You stupid old woman!" He spat at me, though it was Daniel's act that doomed them. "Do you know what you've done? You've signed your family's death warrant." Ash filled the air, the smell of burning secrets thick and choking. I clutched Chloe and Liam to me, my body shaking but my resolve hard as stone. "Better ashes than chains," I whispered. The scarred man's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing into slits of pure hatred. He turned on his heel, motioning to his men. "This isn't over." And just like that, they stormed out, the slam of the cabin door rattling the walls. For a long moment, all we could do was stare at the fire consuming the last of Richard's lies. The ledger was gone. The names were ash. The power was dust. Melissa collapsed onto the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. "You fool! You ruined everything. We could have been untouchable." Daniel dropped to his knees beside her, his voice raw. "No, Melissa. For once we did the right thing." Margaret's hand tightened on my shoulder. "Evelyn, you may have just saved your family, but you've also made enemies." I looked at my grandchildren, trembling in my arms, and at the ashes drifting up the chimney. My husband's secrets had almost destroyed us. Now, without the ledger, we had nothing left to shield us but truth. And truth, I realized, could be more dangerous than any lie. As the last page crumbled to ash, I wondered, had I really protected my family, or had I simply painted a target on all our backs? The smell of smoke clung to us long after we left the cabin. Every step toward the car felt heavier, as though the ashes of Richard's secrets weighed down our shoes. No one spoke on the ride back. Melissa sat rigid in the back seat, her eyes hollow, her arms crossed like bars on a cage. Daniel kept both hands on the wheel, knuckles white, his jaw tight. Chloe and Liam leaned against me, their small bodies trembling, though they tried to pretend they weren't afraid. When we pulled into the driveway of my house, the marigolds swayed in the evening breeze, bright and defiant, as if reminding me, life grows back even after fire. Still, dread lingered. Margaret followed us inside, her expression grim. The sheriff stayed outside, radioing for backup, though I doubted backup would be enough if those men returned. Once the children were settled in the living room with cocoa and blankets, Margaret gathered us around the kitchen table. The same table where Richard used to spread his newspapers, where I corrected Daniel's homework, where Melissa once laughed as she frosted Chloe's birthday cake. Now it felt like a war council. "You need to understand," Margaret said firmly, her voice cutting through the silence. "Burning the ledger doesn't erase its existence. Those men will never be certain whether you made copies or memorized names, or stashed a second book elsewhere. As far as they're concerned, Evelyn, you are still a threat. And threats are dealt with." Melissa's eyes snapped up, filled with venom. All because she couldn't hand it over. We could have bargained, bought safety, bought nothing, Daniel interrupted sharply, his voice raw. "It would have destroyed us. You still don't see that, Melissa." She shoved her chair back, trembling with rage. "Destroyed us? Look around, Daniel. We're broke, we're homeless, and now we're targets. Do you think integrity is going to protect our kids from bullets?" Her words pierced me, but I forced myself to stay calm. "No, Melissa," I said softly. "Integrity won't stop bullets. But greed can invite them." She turned on me, her face twisted. "You think you won? You think you protected your precious marigolds and your precious house? You've doomed us, Evelyn. All of us." I stood slowly, my hand pressing against the table for balance, my body shaking but my gaze steady. "No. Richard doomed us when he built his empire on lies. You nearly doomed us when you tried to seize his sins for yourself. I may have just saved us, if only because I chose to burn what was killing us." Melissa scoffed, but her eyes glistened with tears. She opened her mouth to argue, but Daniel touched her arm, his voice breaking. "Enough. Melissa, enough." For the first time she didn't pull away. The night dragged on. Margaret drew up legal papers to tighten protections around my property, and set up emergency contacts should the men return. The sheriff, guilt-heavy in his voice, promised he'd call in favors to keep watch. Yet none of it erased the fear that lingered, a shadow draped over our shoulders. When the house finally quieted, I sat alone on the porch. The marigolds flickered orange under the moonlight, their petals whispering resilience. I thought about Richard, the man I loved, the man who betrayed my trust, the man who still haunted me with secrets even in death. I thought about Daniel, my son torn between loyalty and survival, and about Melissa, broken by greed but still clinging to the edges of my family. I thought about Chloe and Liam, who deserved a childhood untainted by corruption and fear. And I thought about myself. 74 years had taught me that family isn't defined by blood or by the roofs we share. It's defined by choices, the ones we make when everything is on fire. They tried to put me in a nursing home against my will. They tried to strip me of my dignity, my home, my voice. But I had fought back, not with fists or fury, but with truth, with resolve, with the courage to burn what others worshipped. The next day, Melissa packed her bags. Daniel helped her, tears slipping silently down his cheeks, but he didn't stop her. She left without a word, without looking back. For once, her hunger had nothing left to feed on. Daniel stayed. Not for money, not for shelter, but for healing. He apologized, not just with words, but with actions. Repairing the fence, tending the garden with me, reading bedtime stories to his children under my roof. Slowly, painfully, he began to rebuild what greed had shattered. As for me, I knew the danger wasn't gone. The men in suits might return one day, suspicious, ruthless. But I also knew I would be ready. Because I had already faced betrayal from within my own home and survived it. The life lesson I carry now, the one I share with you, dear listener, is this. You cannot always choose what secrets are left in your care, but you can choose what weight you carry forward. Some truths are worth protecting. Others are worth burning. And no matter how fragile you feel, never let anyone decide your dignity for you. I am Evelyn Hart. I am 74. They tried to put me in a nursing home against my will. The next day I put them on the streets. And though I may be old, I am not finished yet.